for this third webinar of our 7-webinar series. Awesome to have you all here with us. And today we're talking about building and executing the perfect pitch. So really excited to be talking with you all about this topic, and it should be a good engaging webinar. So just before we begin, a couple of housekeeping items and some Zoom etiquette items to address. Video is optional. Don't feel obligated to keep your video on. You definitely can if you would like. However, please stay on mute throughout the webinar. For any questions, we'll be answering questions at the end of the webinar. Please use the chat function if you have any questions throughout the webinar. Feel free to just type them out in the chat and we'll get to them at the end. If you don't want to fully type out your question, just feel free to pop the letter Q in the chat, and during the question period, you can come off mute. We'll invite you to come off mute and you can answer your question that way. And lastly, but not least, this webinar, along with all of our other webinars, will be recorded and uploaded to our online resources section of our website. So if you have to leave early, no worries at all. You can catch the rest of it online. And or if you want to send the recording to someone down the road, you definitely can send them the link afterwards as well. A quick introduction of who I am. My name is Joshua Zapperzan, and I am the venture coach at the Stu Clark Center for Entrepreneurship. I get to meet with students across the university and coach them who are pursuing their own ideas for a venture, and meet with them with helping bring their ideas to life, whether it be through business plan development, feasibility studies, helping raise capital, and really answering any questions that they may have. I graduated from Asper myself in 2016. And I'm also an entrepreneur. The company that I own is Odax Ventures. I also recently built and sold an apparel company called Longball Athletics as well. And aside from that as well, within the entrepreneurial ecosystem, I'm the Manitoba Market Manager for the League of Innovators and the Vice Chair for the Young Associates. Both the League of Innovators and the Young Associates, for all of you on the call, young professionals and young entrepreneurs, highly recommend you learn more about them and check them out, as they're great organizations. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me directly about those as well. Quickly, before we get into the content for today, I want to introduce the mighty Stu Clark Center squad and that our team is, and that being Deborah Jonason-Young, our director, Amy Jones, our program coordinator, and Lindsay Friesen, our office administrator. So if you have any questions at any point about the Stu Clark Center, please do not hesitate to reach out to any one of us and ask away. We are here to help and support your entrepreneurial journey. And you can find us and reach out to us through the website at umanitoba.ca/entrepreneur, and also toss us a follow on Instagram at Stu Clark Center. And there you can learn all of the latest updates, news, and contests from the Stu Clark Center as well. In case you missed our second webinar, all about validation, where we talked about validating your business idea, you can watch the recording on our website, umanitoba.ca/entrepreneur, and get caught up from that perspective. Once you go onto our website, you'll see the online resources section on the side tab. And if you scroll to the bottom of that page, you will find the recording. And that's also where this recording will be as well after. All right, so today's all about the pitch. We're really going to dive into what the most important parts of a pitch are and how to properly execute and deliver your pitch. So there's going to be about 25 minutes of content today, and then some time for Q&A. Reminder, pop any questions you have throughout the webinar in the chat, and we'll get to them at the end. In detail, today we're going to look at really defining what a pitch is, just in case any of you here are a little bit unsure. We're going to break down what those key components of a pitch are and what should go into your pitch when you start to build and think about your pitch. I'm going to give you my 4 tips for producing and executing a memorable pitch. We're going to talk a little bit about Q&A. I think the question and answer period of a pitch is some of the most important parts of a pitch. And then we're also going to talk about a few of the different types of pitches to be able to practice, and then we'll allow some time for Q&A afterwards. So make sure if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask, whether it be about pitching or any other entrepreneurship topics. Now, if you've joined us in any of the previous webinars, I love to get started by learning more about you and about the audience. And I also love the Zoom poll feature. So I'm going to launch a quick poll. It is completely anonymous. Would love to know if you are an entrepreneur. Simply yes, know what you want to be, or you don't want to be an entrepreneur at all. So would love to hear your feedback on where you rank in the poll here. I'll give you a minute. Again, it's completely anonymous, so would love to have your feedback. I'll give you a couple seconds to fill it out. Cool, just about everyone's voted. Awesome. Cool, let's end the poll and I'll share the results with you. So we've got 78% no, but you want to be. Awesome. Love it. Thanks for being here. 17% of you are and 4% don't, but still interested in pitching. So I love it. That is awesome. Good to see the mix of everyone who's here, and happy to have everyone here as well. Cool. So before I get started, there's always one statement I make before every speech and webinar that I do, and that really is that I don't have all the answers. And I always start by saying this because nor do I really think anyone does. And I don't know everything, but I have learned a lot through experience about business and entrepreneurship and pitching. And I want to share those all with you and those lessons learned today. So by no means am I claiming to be a pitching expert, but the goal of today is really to share my real world experiences and hopefully draw a connection to your entrepreneurial story. The fun thing for me about the pitching conversation is that I've participated in a number of pitches, both in an academic setting, outside of an academic setting, pitching to investors and customers. And as well, I've been a judge at a number of different pitch competitions. So really excited to share some of my insights and advice into pitching. And hopefully you can all take a valuable piece of information away from today. Now, I'm going to start with a story. And as I tell this story, it's about an individual, and it's a real story. And as I tell this story, I would love for you to think about who this individual might be that the story is about. And if you think of who it might be, I'd love for you to enter that into the chat and send it in the chat. And what we're going to do is, if you are able to guess correctly who this story is about, the first person that guesses the correct person in the chat before the time I'm done telling the story is going to win a Starbucks gift card. I'll send an electronic gift card to you if you're able to guess right. So don't hesitate. If you have any ideas, pop it in the chat. So I'm going to take you back to the 1920s. In 1920, there was this aspiring illustrator, and he was fired from a newspaper because he was told that he lacked creativity. He was all in this really excited space of all about animation and creativity, and was fired from one of his dream jobs. Over the course of the next 7 years, he tried to pursue his dream job of being an animator. He pitched his cartoons countless number of times to prospective investors, to banks, and potential supporters as well. And he didn't quit. He kept pitching. He was rejected over 300 times. And after each rejection, he adjusted his pitch and he tried again. And he didn't let all the rejections make him not want to pursue his idea. 8 years later, in 1928, he finally made a successful pitch, and he landed a deal to use his animation in a movie to music, which was a huge deal. And this really kickstarted his successful career. Awesome to see the chat blowing up. And yes, you are all correct. This was Walt Disney. So it looks like, Sheelan, you were the first person to respond. So please send me an email directly and I'll send you your Starbucks gift card. Thanks for the engagement and the participation. That was awesome. But really love to share this story before we talk about pitching, because the concept of practice and persistence and the value of what a great pitch can do, you never really know what a pitch could do to kickstart for you and where it will take you. And Walt Disney, those pitches were the foundation of I would say, a pretty successful career. And the fact that he kept reiterating, kept getting feedback, and adjusted his pitch to keep making it better and keep trying is pretty remarkable. So let's dive in. What is a pitch? A pitch really, at the end of the day, is just the presentation of your business idea to a potential investor, bank, customer, friend, family member. Really, when you're pitching, it's because you need resources such as cash, you're trying to acquire new customers to sell your product or service to, or you're looking to build a relationship with someone or a partnership with someone. Today, the big focus around this webinar is going to be around elevator pitches, those 30, 60, 90-second pitches that you can use anywhere and at any time. And in my opinion, I think that is the most important type of pitch because it's short, it's to the point, and it can be used anywhere and at any time. And you don't always have time to prepare your pitch, or you don't always know when you're going to have an opportunity to pitch. And an elevator pitch is one of those that if you have it down pat, you can use at any point in time, and it's extremely, extremely valuable. Now, to many people, that idea of pitching is intimidating. But for you to succeed in business, or to clinch a leadership position within an organization, or even to inspire change within an organization, having a great pitch is not an option. A great pitch is concise, it's convincing, and it's delivered in a self-assured and confident manner. Super, super important. So let's look into what those key components are that goes into a pitch. Just like a business plan, A great pitch should be compelling and practical. For this reason, you must have a thorough and in-depth knowledge of your industry and the idea that you're selling. This includes the knowledge of your target market, the particular problem that your idea is solving, the anticipated revenues that you're going to expect, the competition, the rival products, and the uniqueness of your idea, among others. In this regard, a great pitch must convince that listener that if it's an investor, convince them that their money is in safe hands. And if you're pitching to a customer, well, it's that the value of the product is worthwhile and that they're going to be happy with your product. So these key components, I've broken them down into a few, and they are a really strong introduction, looking at defining the problem. If you recall, a couple webinars ago, we talked about defining that root problem and really understanding what it is you're solving is super important. And then we're outlining the solution, what exactly it is that you're selling, the service you're providing, or the product that you're selling. We're looking at the target market, the size, the opportunity. And again, just kind of like our last webinar in the validation section, we talked about quantifying how large your opportunity is and the market size of which you're selling to. After that, we're looking at the business model from both a team perspective, an operations perspective, and a financial perspective. And then we're concluding with a really strong concluding statement. And all these components make for a really strong, compelling, and cohesive pitch. And it's always important to remember to have an end goal for your pitch as well. And at the end of the day, delivering a successful pitch, it's an art form. And it takes a lot of practice to master. But by keeping your pitch short, to the point, and informative, you really will increase your chances of delivering a memorable pitch. Now we're going to dive deep into each of these 6 items a little bit more. But before we do that, I want to ask your thoughts, again, with one more poll, of what you think out of these 6 pieces or these 6 key components are the most important part of the pitch. So if you had to choose one, what would you think? So I'm going to launch the poll. Again, completely anonymous. Would love to have your engagement and vote on what you think is the most important part of the pitch. Awesome. Seeing lots of votes, which is great. Thanks everyone for the participation. I'll give you a couple more seconds for a couple last votes. Just about everyone's voted, which is awesome. Cool. And I'm going to end the poll and let's check out the results. Cool. So 42% of you said your opening statement, 31% defining the problem, 12% the solution, 8% the business model and financials, and 4% tied for the target market and opportunity and the conclusion. Awesome. Those are great responses. And thank you everyone for participating. Always awesome to see where everyone's thoughts are at in terms of the pitch. And to be completely honest with you, I think that all the key components are pretty important. It is hard to pick one, but if I had to pick one, it really is the introduction and the conclusion. I think most conversations and most pitches, your listener is going to walk away always remembering that strong introduction and that concluding remark that you made. Sometimes those are the most important things that stick out. And that's where I recommend also to be really, really strong with your pitch. So let's dive into those sections. First of all, it's the strong introduction. It's all about making your listener interested right away. And the best way to do that is to make a strong introduction and to hook that listener into wanting to learn more and listen to more is by doing one of 3 things. First of all, make a statement. An example of this could be a statement that I made for a pitch that I pitched for a mobile application for paramedics that digitized patient care protocols, and our value proposition was really at the end of the day that we were going to save lives. The statement at the beginning of my pitch was, there are 250,000 deaths in the United States that occur every year due to medical error, and 9.1% of paramedics have reported committing a treatment error. There's my statement. Right away, I've hooked into, I've set up a problem that I'm solving. I've outlined the magnitude of the problem, 250,000 deaths. That's a listener catcher. People are going to listen to that. And it really sets up that problem and the magnitude of the solution. So make a statement, set that pitch up and hook them early into something that's really interesting. A second way to do it is to tell a story. Everybody loves stories. Tell a story, make a personal connection, make someone really listen in terms of wanting to hear more about the story. Now, remember, if you only have 30, 60, 90 seconds, you can't tell a very long story, but you can relate it back to your personal experience and the problem that you're solving. The third way that I recommend to open with your pitch is to ask a question. Ask your listener, have you ever felt, have you ever experienced? Make them personally connected to the problem that you're solving or whatever it is that you're speaking about. So those are my 3 areas and tips for how to really start a strong pitch. And at the end of the day, you got to make your listener interested, engaged, and excited right away. If you don't get their attention really early, you've lost them and they may not pay attention to the rest of your pitch. So that beginning, those first few seconds are critical to grab their attention. So after you've grabbed their attention, you're going to define the problem. And believe it or not, most people skip this and they go straight to the solution. Don't feel like you need to rush to get to your solution. The most important thing is to identify a problem that is worth solving. And as you can remember back in the first webinar, if you were with us for that, we talked about finding that root problem and really understanding what that problem is and making sure that it's a problem that potential customers have. Try and distill your customer's problem down to its simplest form. Ideally, you should be able to describe the problem you're solving in 1 or 2 sentences, or potentially just a few bullet points if you think about it that way. In the long run, your company or your business may be solving multiple customer problems, but initially you'll be way more successful if you focus on one core problem, especially in your pitch. So a couple of questions to consider as you're building your pitch and going through this defining the problem. Why does this problem exist? Why is this a problem worth solving? And again, that piece about telling a story or connecting it to that opening statement really, really helps so that the listener can better understand and relate to the importance and the magnitude for the problem. And this is really setting the stage for your solution and for your business and the operations of it as well. So following the problem, you're going to start to outline the solution you're solving, and you need to explain your solution clearly. A clear problem statement will help you focus your solution on solving that one problem and not stretch the solution to solve multiple potential problems. Again, try and distill your solution description down to as few words as possible. You should be able to describe it at a high level in 1 to 2 sentences, or again, if you think of bullet points, 1 to 2 bullet points. This is the real meat of your pitch. It's the substance, it's the value. And when you're talking about or thinking about building your pitch to outlining the solution, you really want to think about describing the solution about in a way that it solves the problem you listed. Not only why does it solve the problem and how does it solve the problem, but why is this the right solution and the best solution for solving that problem? Again, be as descriptive as possible so that your listener can clearly understand what it is that your business is offering. After we talk about the solution, we're going to look into the market size and the opportunity. This really supports your solution and it provides insight into the potential and the feasibility of your business. Now, in our validation webinar, we really talked about quantifying your target market and the opportunity. And this is why, because when you're speaking about the opportunity, you need to be able to highlight the magnitude that your business has. And the best way to do that is by using numbers. Numbers are your friend. They provide clarity, and everyone loves to hear numbers. If you are looking to quantify this and you're looking at, who it is that you're speaking to, you really need to know if there's a market for your idea and how big it is. So I can't stress enough. Numbers are your friend in a pitch, especially when speaking about your market size to really expand on. The other important piece to consider is who's your competition and why are you better and what makes you different as well. And making sure that you're really specific and can properly communicate who that reachable market is. So after we look at that, we're looking at the business model. And for a great pitch, you don't necessarily have to show a detailed 5-year financial forecast, but what's more important is that you understand your business model. A business model may sound like something very complex, but fortunately it's not. All you really need to know at the end of the day is who pays your bills and what kinds of expenses you have. So when you're looking at the business model within a pitch, it's really about describing how essentially you're going to make money, whether it's mentioning the price that you're selling your product at, the expected revenue you have in the first next to high couple of years. And at the end of the day, you really want to provide that high level financial overview in 1 to 2 sentences. An example of this could be by just stating, By the end of year 3, we expect to have $2.5 million in revenue and a net profit of 25%. Done. Simple, clear. You've provided, again, quantifying a number, and it shows to your listener the size and the magnitude of your business. And again, speaks to the expenses and the profit that your business is expected to make. That's all you need to say. You don't need to go into much depth. The other really key component to this business model is the concept of your team. Who is on your team? And not only who, but why is this the right team for success? So many investors, especially when you're pitching to them, they want to know not only is this business idea good, but is this business, is there a team that can support this business and that has the right skill sets to do this? So again, an example of something that you can say in the pitch at the end in order to illustrate this is something like, our team and advisory board has over 50 years experience in finance, sales, and manufacturing. And because of this, we are confident that our team is the right team to lead this business to success. Again, simple, short, and I provided a number. I quantified a number of years to speak to the magnitude of how great our team really is. Lastly, it's all about the conclusion. And the conclusion, as we mentioned, is super, super important. That beginning and that end is really what that listener is going to take away from your pitch. Leave the listener wanting to learn more. Ask them if they can follow up, or if you can follow up with them. If you're asking for money, that ask should be in the conclusion as well. And always give your listener a way to connect with you in the future, or a way to learn more about your business or your product. And if time permits, ask if they have any questions. That concluding statement and those concluding remarks and the way that you leave your pitch and you leave that listener is so important, because at the end, that's the impression they're walking away with, not only about your pitch and your business idea, but also you as a person. And so it's super important to have a strong concluding statement and really specifying, again, if there's an ask or what it is that you want the listener to take away from the pitch. So those are really diving deep into the 6 key components of what goes into a business plan or business pitch. Let's talk a little bit about preparing to pitch. And at the end of the day, you have to practice. You can't practice enough for pitching. And I can't stress enough, it is you want to be able to memorize your pitch. It is not always a great thing if you have to pull out a deck of cue cards or a piece of paper when you're going to pitch to an investor or a customer. You want to show that you know your stuff. Have it memorized, do your homework, understand who it is that you're pitching to as well, and go into the pitch feeling confident. Practice in front of your friends and your family, ask for their advice, tweak your pitch accordingly, just like Walt Disney did. Take all of the feedback, reiterate, make it better. And at the end of the day, don't forget to be authentic. Being authentic is so important to showcase your brand and what it is that you as an entrepreneur represent and how you go about building your business. One of my favorite parts about pitching, where it really shows if you know your stuff, is in the Q&A. And not all the time is there an opportunity in a pitch for a Q&A, but if there ever is an opportunity for a Q&A, or if you have the option to have time for a Q&A, I highly, highly recommend it. This is your time to shine and to show your listener that you are indeed the expert on this subject matter that you just pitched. Anyone can memorize a pitch, but can you adequately answer questions about your business on the spot? That's what really proves whether you know your stuff or not. And really, at the end of the day, if back to that question about your team and if you're the right team to lead this business. And that's why Q&A is super, super important. A couple key things when handling Q&A comments and suggestions and advice that I have. First of all, always answer in a positive way. Always relate the answer back of the question to how the individual, the listener, could benefit. For example, if you're pitching to an investor, relate the question back to money and the return on investment that investors having, because at the end of the day, they probably want to know the most important piece if they're going to get their money back and what they're going to do. So if they ask a question, if there's a way to spin the answer back in terms of the value from an investment perspective, do it. Now, if you're pitching to a potential customer, you always want to try and relate that answer back towards the value of your product or the service and how it can solve the problem. So always think about answering in a positive way and how the listener can benefit. Secondly, is if you don't know the answer, don't lie. Super, super important. And I've seen it and I've heard stories of entrepreneurs. They get asked a tough question and they don't have the answer and they'll end up lying and they get caught with a lie. There's nothing worse. Not only is it going to completely lose that listener, but it's also going to tarnish your brand and your reputation. So whatever you do, do not lie. If you get asked a question and you don't know the answer, the best thing to do is to be honest. A great way to reply back is by saying something along the lines of, you know, thank you for your question. That is something that my team and I are currently working through and something we need to further define. Can I follow up with you once I have a more complete answer for you? Totally okay to say that. Again, you're now opening the door for future communications and showing interest that you want to answer the question and get back to the listener. But whatever you do, don't lie. Next, prepare by thinking about all possible questions and practice answering them. Again, back to the point of practice, practice, practice. You can have friends, family, coworkers, other individuals that you know write out questions for you or ask you questions and you can practice answering them on the spot. Super, super important for your preparation of Q&A. And make sure you answer the question. Don't avoid it. If someone asks you a question, don't answer something completely different. Answer the question that's asked. And again, if you don't know it, don't lie and admit it and own up to it and take that one step further and take initiative to answer it in the future. But whatever you do, don't avoid the question. Always answer the question that's being asked. And my last piece of advice is to be aware of the length of your answers. You don't want to talk for too long and go on a big rant when someone's asked you a question, but you want to also make sure that you adequately answer the question in enough detail that answers the listener's question. So there is a fine line there, and there's really no rule of thumb in terms of how long or how many seconds it should be, but always be cautious and aware of the time that you're taking to respond to questions. At the end of the day, competitions are won and lost in Q&A. Investment deals are secured or lost in Q&A. It's so important. Not only does it speak to your knowledge and understanding of your business, but also you as an entrepreneur. Are you poised? Are you confident when answering? It speaks to a lot about the business, but also you as a person, which is what a lot of people are either supporting, investing in, or why they're wanting to communicate with you. So I'm going to break things down into 4 pitches. And this is what I recommend. These are 4 different types of pitches that I recommend you work on and that you have prepared, because you never know when you're going to need any of them. So I encourage you all to perfect all of these types of pitches because they're super important. And as an entrepreneur, you'll probably need to execute on all these at some point in your entrepreneurial journey. The first one's a Twitter pitch. So in, I think, what's a tweet? 280 characters. So in 280 characters or less, if someone asked you on the spot in 1 to 2 punchy sentences what your business is, how do you respond? So that's the Twitter pitch. The second one is the elevator pitch, which is your short 30, 60, 90-second pitch about your business, really what we've been talking about most of this webinar. Super, super important. The third one is a competition pitch. By the way, for all of you students, both the Stu Clark Investment Competition, undergraduate, graduate, and high school level competition, check them out. This is exactly the pitch that you're going to need to prepare. It's that 10 to 20 minute pitch with a pitch deck. You have time to prepare. You have a slideshow, kind of like this webinar, and you're pitching to a panel of judges to get feedback. And you can usually win some good cash prizes. So on a side note, don't forget to check out all of our competitions. And then lastly is the investor pitch. So this is similar to a competition pitch, but it's a lot, the conversation and the pieces that you're pitching on are a lot more detail oriented and a lot more finance based and a lot more quantitative. So the conversation is usually a lot more dynamic and much different. But these are really 4 pitches that if you can nail them down and really understand, then you are going to do super, super well in all of your pitching. It's important to note that you're always pitching. Life's a pitch, whether you know it or not, whether it's pitching your business idea, whether it's just trying to sell your idea to a friend or make your claim, you just can't avoid pitching. And essentially at the end of the day, everything that we've talked about and those key components go through everything. They deal with every type of pitch. And at the end of the day, you really can't avoid pitching whether you like it or not. So the more you practice it, the better. And with any pitch, you as an entrepreneur, you have to find a way to take your audience and take your listener through this journey so that they can easily relate to that idea or the problem that is being solved and really trying to make a connection to them understanding why is it that that listener is listening to you in the first place. And the one thing that all great presenters do is they tell stories. We all love stories. Stories have a beginning, they have a middle, and they have an end. They grab our attention right away and they hold it all the way to the end. And a pitch is no different. It's exactly the same. So just about at the end here, here's my 4 tips for a memorable pitch, my top 4 things. A great pitch is so crucial for selling your brand. It is essentially reflects your strategic plan for your product. And for this reason, a great pitch should always be fresh and in tandem with the current market trends in the market and the current state of your business or your startup. And in most cases, the success of a brand is determined by the effectiveness of the pitch. From experience, numerous brands fail not because of their inherent weakness, but because of poor pitching. If you can't properly articulate to someone what your idea is, what the problem is you're solving, you've lost them. You're not going to be able to sell what it is you're doing, even if it's a great product. So this really underlines the importance of having a great pitch to really promote your brand. So tip number 1 is practice. I can't say it enough, and you can't prepare enough. The more practice, the better. Secondly is to engage, smile, engage with eye contact. Listeners look at that. They pick up on things. They pick up on that. It speaks to character, it speaks to your brand, and it speaks to you as an entrepreneur. Thirdly, know your audience, know who you're pitching to. Super, super important. Is this a pitch to an investor? Is this a pitch to a customer? Is this a pitch to a friend or a family member? Really understand your audience and know who you're pitching. If you have time and you have time ahead of time to prepare, do your research and know a little bit about them as well. Goes a long way. And lastly is to follow up. Don't be afraid to follow up after a pitch. Continue to communicate with your listener. Ask them, hey, would love to keep in contact, would love to keep you updated on the status of my business. Do you mind? Those are my 4 tips. 3 cornerstones of pitches is clarity, simplicity, and memorability. Be clear. Don't confuse your listener. Keep things simple. Pretend your listener is a 5-year-old and make it memorable. Stand out from everyone else. These are the 3 cornerstones of great pitches. Strip your story of all the flair, eliminate the weak parts, and practice, practice, practice before delivering your pitch to the actual audience. Now, as I say with everything, and my favorite saying to say to all entrepreneurs is that you cannot build a successful business with a flawed foundation, and pitches are foundational pieces to your business. Look at Walt Disney. Those pitches were foundational in order for the growth of his business. You can't craft the perfect pitch either without some of those fundamental functions and details in place for your business. So always remember that. So what are today's key takeaways from this webinar? First of all, delivering a successful pitch, it's an art form that takes a lot of practice to master. It is okay if you don't get it on the first try. Second, by keeping your pitch short, to the point, and informative, you will increase your chances of delivering a really, really memorable pitch. And thirdly, those key components of having a strong introduction, clearly defining the problem, outlining the solution, talking about that addressable market, the business model, and the conclusion. Super, super important to make sure you touch on all of those. Next, answer every question in a positive way and never lie. Super, super important. Practice, practice, practice. Can't say it enough, and you can't practice enough. The more practice, the better, and the more prepared you will be for any situation to pitch. And continue to revise, make your pitch better. Ask for feedback after you pitch. And you know what, always be making it better. Look at Walt Disney. After every 300 pitches where he was rejected, he made things better, 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 and his pitch got better, and it finally worked. So never give up. Keep revising, iterating, and making it better. And lastly, again, you cannot build a successful business with a flawed foundation. Super important to remember. Those key foundational pieces of your business are so, so important. As always, we understand that as an entrepreneur, you can't do it alone. There are so many great resources in the community to help you through your entrepreneurial journey. The logos on the screen are some of our at the Stu Clark Center community resources and partnerships that we definitely recommend you reaching out to and leveraging. You're never alone, and no matter what stage you're at in the business planning cycle, there is help and support for you. If you at all have any questions about any of these resources, do not hesitate to reach out to any of us at the Stu Clark Center. We are happy to help. Lastly, do not hesitate to take advantage of the Venture Coach program at the Stu Clark Center. It is completely free to meet with myself. If you want feedback on your pitch and advice, I'm happy to listen to your pitch and provide that feedback. Or if you just want to talk about entrepreneurship, happy to do so as well. Any questions, big or small, free service. Do not hesitate to book and reach out and ask for help. We're here to support. To book those meetings and appointments, you can do so online and through Startup Tree as well. Lastly, before we get to questions, just a reminder that on October 28th, our next webinar is coming up where we will be diving into the business plan essentials. We'll be looking at the lean canvas model and really all those key components into a business plan and what goes into it. So with that being said, I would like to open it up and ask any questions that anyone might have. If you need to leave, that is no problem. You feel free to do so. But I hope everyone was able to take some value from today's webinar and looking forward to answering any questions you may have.
Hi, Josh. I have a question.
Absolutely.
So I was just curious, when it comes to doing those competition pitches, what is the best program for us to use in order to complete the slide deck?
I personally always use PowerPoint. I know a lot of people use Keynote on a Mac, but I think personally PowerPoint's the best. I know some people use online softwares as well. However, if you're using like Google Slides or something, I've also seen a lot of pitches kind of not work because you're relying on the connectivity and everything. So PowerPoint is my recommendation. On another note to that too, building your pitch deck is super important. And there's so many amazing templates out there and free resources to build cool infographics and really design your pitch and your slide deck in a cool way. So definitely recommend checking some of those out. And the most of those are with PowerPoint.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Sir, in our pitch, do we need to include how are we gonna pay our employees in future and everything?
It depends on the pitch, I would say. If it's a quick elevator pitch, I don't think I would worry about that unless you're pitching to a potential employee. Pitch is trying to attract someone to join your team, then absolutely, that's an important part. And I would replace that with the financial part of the business in terms of how you're going to pay them. But if it's a pitch to a customer, to an investor, I wouldn't specifically put that in your pitch. If they want to know, let them ask. And I would exclude that. I think there's other more important items to discuss given a short period of time. But good question.
And sir, how can we get like the best introduction for our pitch? Like the statement, how can we get a best statement?
So the best statement is by doing a lot of market validation and research and really understanding what the problem is you're solving. So kind of back to the example that I mentioned about with the paramedic example, we did a lot of research to find out that there was 250,000 deaths a year due to medical error. And that alone is an astounding statement, but we wouldn't have found that if we didn't do our validation to try and prove our problem. So really understanding your root problem and doing your validation to quantify things in terms of why your problem exists, you'll find a statement.
All right, thanks a lot.
Any questions in the chat? Oh, Lynn, I think you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Gotcha.
Perfect. There's a couple questions in the chat about previous slides from your previous webinars, and maybe you could just tell them where to find them on the website.
Yeah, absolutely. Good question. On the website, on the side, if you go to the online resource section, all of the recordings will be there as well. I do send up a follow-up email with the slides, a printout of the slides in a PDF form for those that attended. So definitely, if you, for whatever reason, that email didn't go through from the last webinar, just send me a note and I'm happy to send that to you as well. But the actual recordings of the webinars will be on the website.
Perfect. Thank you. And we have another question. What are some pitches out there that you have seen and would recommend?
Good question. What I will do is I will compile a list, and in that follow-up email, I'll send you a couple links to some really great pitches, some videos, and some tips as well. So I'll make sure I include that in the follow-up email. So I'll probably send that out within the next day or two.
Is it for everyone?
Pardon me?
Like, are you gonna send the pitches, sample pitches to everyone?
Yes, I will include that to everyone that's on the webinar here today that RSVP'd.
Thanks a lot, sir.
And again, on that note, if there's any pitches that you want to practice and get feedback from me, please don't hesitate to book a meeting through Startup Tree, and I'm happy to provide feedback on your pitch as well.
For sure, sir. Thanks a lot.
Some people are asking for the slides to the presentation instead of the videos. I'm not sure if we will be sending those out. Josh, do you have any comments?
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll send out a PDF of some of those slides with some of the key kind of components and breakdown. I won't send you the entire deck, but those key component slides I will send, and I will send that in the follow-up email. If you, for whatever reason, haven't received the emails, maybe, I don't know, maybe some of them have gone to junk mail, but just send me a private note, a private email. You can send it to the Venture Coach email as well. And I'll make sure I send you webinar 2 and this one as well.
Just putting your email in here now. So if anybody hasn't received any of these follow-up emails, just shoot us a quick email and we will respond ASAP.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Lynn.
Is there any other questions anyone has for Josh?
No questions? Sheelan, you win the Starbucks gift card, so congrats. I will send that to you.
Perfect.
No other questions? Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for attending. I hope you all found value in this webinar. And again, don't hesitate to reach out if you have any other questions or if you want to book a meeting with myself as the Venture Coach. And please feel free to RSVP for the upcoming webinars as well.
Sir, one last question.
Yeah, go for it.
So how can we do, like, what are the resources from where we can have a research for the market? Like,
yeah, absolutely. Good question. So that was, we talked about in our second webinar in validation. So what I would do is I'll maybe send you the link from the online resource section to that webinar recording. And we dove deep into some resources. There's definitely a lot out there, but I'll also mention that just within some of those partnerships like the World Trade Center and those community resources, there's some phenomenal resources in order to do some validation, including all of the libraries and the access to resources that you have as students. But feel free to check out webinar 2 about validation as we go deep into that topic.
all right, thanks a lot.
Awesome. If anyone else has any other questions, feel free to reach out directly to me. But aside from that, thanks again. Hope you all had value. I'll stay on the call here for a couple seconds as you all leave. And if you have any questions at the end, happy to answer. But have a great day, and looking forward to hopefully seeing you all at the next webinar.